I have the pleasure to start this meeting, this lecture of Holly Rogers. She gently, she very kindly agreed to be with us in this afternoon. I just introduced her a little bit. So Holly Rogers is professor in the Department of Music at Goldsmith University of London. She has many interests, which include music and sound and experimental films, documentary, visual arts, music videos, games, and of course, YouTube, and intertextuality, intermediality, and everything. I won't tell all the names of her books because it would be very long. She has many, many books and articles. And I had the pleasure of getting in contact with Holly for the first time in this mode virtually in a conference that was held actually in Spain. It was the Simpósio Internacional da Criação Musical da Banda Sonora, and it was a very inspiring lecture about audiovisual noise in transmedia culture. So, and now, Holly, please, it's up to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to meet Luíza properly. We've been talking for years online and never had proper meetings, so it's really lovely to see you all. I am going to talk a little bit about some recent work on kind of social media that came from work years ago that was on experimental culture. So I started off in kind of high avant-garde, went to real experimental audiovisual culture, and somehow have arrived into kind of mainstream social media, which has so many similarities with the early experimental filmmakers. It's really interesting. I'm going to read it because, one, I have a tendency to just go on forever, which is not what anyone needs. And two, just if there are captions, it might just be a little clearer. I hope the captions work. They sometimes are they working now?
Yeah, they're working. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll try not to be too South London. It doesn't always get my action. So I'm going to share my screen, and I won't be able to see you all. So if anything goes wrong, please shout. And I hope it will work. Luíza, is that changed?
Yeah, it changed. Yeah, it changed slides.
Amazing. Okay, so hopefully this won't be longer than about 45 minutes. So hold on, you can do it. I'm going to start with a little bit of a kind of a recap of the YouTube book. I know that some of you had a look at the intro, so some of this material might be quite familiar to you. But then just going to start talking about what social media might mean to the construction of canons, to the gatekeeping of music, and so on. So there's good and bad here. Right, so the quote from this slide that we're looking at is, I'm just going to say that's the wildest video I've ever seen. When YouTuber Juicy uttered these words in a reaction to Lil Nas X's 2021 Montero Call Me By Your Name video, she contributed to a swirl of attention, comments, spin-offs and discussion that had taken the internet by storm. The Montero project is made up of numerous different texts. There's prequels and sequel videos about this story in the video that extend the world in multiple directions. And Lil Nas X extensively remediated his own music and images, sending versions, interpretations, and even his own reaction videos to his own work through YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, each one very different. In October 2022, this work across media, transmedia, spread, moved out into the real world for the live Montero gig at California's YouTube Theatre, which used large screens, live dancers, and lavish costumes to realize the project's audiovisual aesthetics in multi-dimensions. Footage from numerous mobile phones taken from the audience instantly relayed the information back onto YouTube. where the multiple perspectives joined the rapid spread of fan noise from new reaction videos, mashups, cover versions, vids, supercuts, samples, lyric videos, and so on. Montero's universe was also generating controversy from artist and director Andrew Thomas Huang, who pointed out the video's marked similarities to his early video for FKA Twigs' Cellophane, which you can see in the right-hand corner. As the song, its video, its imagined other worlds, and its criticisms spread through social media, Seidman's reaction video voiced confusion over the music video's origins. The three of them say, "It's not a bad song either, man, I'll give him that." The other one says, "I feel like I've heard it before though." And the response is, "You might have heard it on TikTok already. Everything's on TikTok already." The last one says, "Yeah, maybe, who knows anymore." So where does Montero Call Me By Your Name start and where does it end? And whose work is it? And what does this mean for the traditional and deeply problematic ways in which music canons and repertoires have been formed and sustained? And for those who traditionally have been considered the gatekeepers of music, music patrons, universities, academics, historians, A&R personnel, record labels, radio stations, TV stations, record shops, journalists, promoters, etc., etc. So when a piece of music moves through what Carol Vanales calls the media swirl, or the great media swirl now, it can quickly gain cultural traction. Cultural theorist Henry Jenkins says value can be generated primarily via spreadability. Through reuse, reworking and redistribution, spreadable media content gains greater resonance in the culture, taking on new meanings, finding new audiences, attracting new markets, and generating new values. While musicians and industry personnel work new media for their marketing and distribution potential, it is fans who engender the greatest traction for music by developing and sharing cover versions and supercuts and remakes and so on. So this marriage of commerce and fandom and professional and amateur creativity has had a profound influence on contemporary musical cultures, practices, and of course the music industry. So since its launch in 2005, YouTube has been a key driver in the regeneration of music through and across online spaces. With easy-to-use software and slogans like broadcast yourself, the platform encourages people to participate by adding their own videos or by liking, sharing, commenting on, manipulating and appropriating previously uploaded material. And it's participatory, so the way in which we participate, nature has significantly affected how we produce, consume, circulate and analyse music, an effect that has since intensified with TikTok, which slogan is "It starts with TikTok", Instagram, capture and share the world's moments, and Twitter, it's happening, it's what's happening, and Twitch is you're already one of us. So it's about inclusion, participation, and your voice is important to us. While on the one hand, it's been argued that online culture has provided a refreshed and democratized site for musical creativity and fandom, particularly for the born digital, on the other, it has been marred by very real participation gaps generated by poor access to technology or internet connection, censorship, by the complex social articulations of fan communities, and by dark algorithms and fan activities that sustain visibility for white artists from the global north at the expense of literally everyone else in the world. So there's some great studies about this, about like Miley Cyrus's twerking, how it's kind of appropriating a Black cultural form that she made very famous and became famous for, while the Black girls whose culture, who were kind of voicing their culture through this activity, just disappeared. So as we as academics begin to grapple with this massive area of research, obstacles abound immediately. What analytical lens can we look through? What is appropriate, and do we have any tools that are transferable from other related disciplines to look at this stuff? Music online uses, but also radically alters, even upends previous creative approaches. Throughout my work on internet culture so far, I've been acutely aware of my own positionality. I'm not born digital, not that you can tell. I'm not a massive social media user. I use it for work. I speak from a position of white privilege. I'm an academic in a well-off country, although unfortunately not a rich academic. And I'm very consciously applying patterns of high theory thinking from other audiovisual forms developed in my previous work on experimental film sound and video art to the wilds of cyber media. Are these patterns appropriate? And who am I to talk about and try to gatekeep these issues? Now I'm just going to check. Is everything still going okay there, Luíza? Can you hear everything?
Yes, yes.
Lovely. Okay. Seems very unlikely, but... So recent anthologies like the Cambridge Companion to Music and Digital Culture, Georgina Bourne's work on internet-mediated music, and Nick Pryor's work on the issues of democratization were some of the early big hitters in the field of internet music. There were also some really cool areas of investigation opening up, particularly on cover songs and vidding, on the music industry, on race and on visibility. In terms of the music industry, many artists have been discovered on YouTube in particular, or use the platform to promote themselves through personal blogs, vlogs, acoustic sets, and behind-the-scenes footage, while users have been afforded the power to transform a musician's reputation through shares and comments. This is my favorite one, which of course can also catapult the user to instant fame. Perhaps most importantly, though, is the freedom that social media and the act of producing our own material has had on women, on gay, transgender, non-binary and queer musicians, particularly in the realms of internet music like hyperpop, which I'm totally obsessed with at the moment. If we return to my idea about music canons earlier, the freedoms or the apparent freedoms, we'll come back to that, from traditional forms of education, representation and expression that have traditionally constructed art music, popular music, jazz and folk canons are almost exclusively white and male. The reasons for this are historical and social. The art music canon, for instance, is populated by large-scale works that demonstrate formal and technical complexity and longevity. These works are original and progressive. They offer a form of historical transcendence and greatness that ensures that music continues to be played regularly, recorded and analysed, and have been influential to subsequent composers. We can say that these works demonstrate considerable significance, both in their immediate context and for subsequent musicians. But before women had access to equal education, were allowed to perform in public and could have their works published, this domain was exclusively male. Unfortunately, when popular music and rock canons began to form during the 20th century, this criteria remained hard to shake, and they too were quickly populated by the same demographic of musician. There's a lot of amazing work going on in pop musicology on canons at the moment. So now, with access to technology, musical material and strong online fan communities, a more diverse range of musicians have found their feet and their tribes through social media. Lil Nas X's Montero is a great case in point. As gay, and then earlier this year as a little bit transsexual, all these things have fundamentally reconfigured not only the music industry, but also the ways in which we think about and construct music histories. So there are already a few great books that try to decanonize and decolonize our music canons. This one in the middle actually is a game changer, Glitch Feminism. If you haven't read it, please have a go. It's like reading poetry or drinking like a beautiful drink. It's so lovely. Oh, right. So these are the three great books that when we started to work on the 2 volumes, YouTuber Music and Remediating Sound, we're kind of drawing inspiration from. So the first book, is that changing, Luíza?
Yes, it's changing. It's changing.
Oh, hooray. Oh my God. So when we were collecting together abstracts and titles for 2 books, this one's like really interestingly titled YouTube and Music, it became clear that analytical approach and its relation to a decolonialized music canon, like what can social media offer us that is different in perspective about how we write music history, was an important concept for almost all of our contributors. One of the nicest things about this book is almost all of the contributors are PhD and MA students. There's a few kind of older people in there, but it's kind of very much on the ground, grassrootsy sort of project. So some of these authors stuck to their guns and applied their existing theoretical PhD techniques to a new network forms by using the tools already developed for the study of film music, which is really useful. Ludomusicology, game sound, music video, music psychology, and so on. And it's absolutely true that many of the aesthetics of social media musicking have been learnt from these related audiovisual cousins. So in our first book, then these approaches clustered very naturally into a focus on transmedia, the way that sound and image can work across media, like in Lil Nas X's work. And the interplay between live and mediated forms, on pedagogy, on teaching, like what can social media give us in terms of how can we teach creatively? And then a very clear focus on how users interact with and circulate music practices. And these authors were looking at algorithms and psychological interpretation of user comments and so on. So in our second book, approaches were borrowed from discussions of race and gender, archival research practices, fan studies, and protest song. So all existing areas of research. But at the same time, most of our authors showed an interest in how particular pieces of music or sound bites continue to move around through repetition, covering, quotation, parody, samples, and so on. These things were clearly key to the sonic aesthetics of social media. And although everyone approached music's migration through the internet differently, there was a tangible focus on how this movement activated the creativity of musicians and non-musicians alike. There was a freedom on it. And on how quickly sounds became disconnected from their original authors. So we editors decided to collect all these approaches together to sonic repeatability, for better or worse, and call it remediation. We'll come back to that. So YouTube's potential for interaction rests within the wider affordances at the time of new media. So in kind of the early 2000s, mid 2010, when the term Web 2.0 was first coined by Darcy DiNucci in 1999, the ways in which internet users could contribute to and drive the aesthetics of online culture were only just beginning to be realised. Tim O'Reilly, when he brought the term into popular parlance during a conference speech 5 years later, demonstrated how the capacity to what he referred to as hackability was being built into new platforms. The products of these industries and media, such as software, computer games, websites, and social networks, writes Lev Manovich, are explicitly designed to be customized by the users. A few months after O'Reilly's speech, the principles of hackability became the cornerstone of YouTube. This was clearly indicated in 2006 when Time magazine, and this was in the chapter I think you looked at, announced you as their person of the year. Yes, you. You control the information age. Welcome to your world, was written underneath a mirrored YouTube screen with the word YouTube, you, blazoned across it. So initially, though, and despite YouTube's early call to broadcast yourself, professionally made content dominated the platform. This could be new footage uploaded by commercial enterprises, music video, adverts, film trailers, concert footage, or fan-uploaded clips of pre-existent work. Although the platform's content rapidly diversified, its signature as a video sharing site remained really strong. And 10 years ago, in her pioneering 2013 research into YouTube's content, Jose van Dijk, in her found that over 2/3 of user-appropriate uploaded clips were taken from professional sources. She says, meaning that the videos are not created by uploaders themselves, but were recycled by fans, so recycling material. More recently, notions of recycling professional content has become much more complicated. While pre-existing videos could be shared or recycled, without intervention, of course, there has been an increasingly tendency to remodel and to recraft. Think about TikTok. Other users may then copy and recycle the transformed music or video rather than the original version, reworking it further and confusing the distinctions between professional and user-generated content. On the one hand, the combination of free and easy to use editing software meant that amateur uploaders were able to create more professional looking videos, a process clearly seen in the emergence of the proficient YouTuber able to monetize the platform's stylish and current aesthetics. On the other hand, the process of what Carol Vanales earlier called YouTubification saw the platform's audiovisual delivery bleed beyond its boundaries. Commercial music, video directors and filmmakers increasingly draw on the aesthetics of online DIY and amateur culture in their professional work, leading to a reciprocal flow of influence between contemporary media forms. When users edit and upload moving image clips, distinctions between the creator and its consumer are reduced. Other users can work on these versions and so on, and the versions can go on forever and ever and ever. This movement of material through online culture allows it to accumulate and discard perspectives, styles, meanings, and gestures. Back to the great media swirl. Hang on, this is one example. So I forgot this. Let's hope the sound works, of just how something that is, you'll all know this ditty and you all know these images, how it became kind of instantly located in culture. Everyone knew exactly what this little motto, this musical motto, came from. But within about 20 hours of it first screening, it was all over social media for all sorts of random, witty meanings.
First time wrestler. Look at this sweet little guy. He really tried to give her a chance. She got scared and froze.
So last year I did a quick study of the way that the Squid Game theme moved through social media after its first airing. And it took no time at all. At first, the TikToks and so on were about potentially violent or funny scenes of confrontation. It took about 18 hours for it to be a funny accompaniment to cat videos. And then by the next day, people were using it for hair demonstrations and so on. So it completely lost its cultural resonance, become something else entirely. So the revoicing of creative material is, of course, no new thing. And visual and moving image histories have been reconfigured across their many styles. The multiple histories of music have also been driven by repetitions and remediations. Internal music repetition is an integral part of compositional practice, directing things like the theme and variation, like La Folia, sonata form, da capo arias, folk music's personification, the leitmotif, of course, African drumming patterns, the dub beat. There's some sound system for you. Minimalism and electronica's insistent reiterations, the song chorus, the circularities of the Javanese gamelan, and electronic music and the repetitions of electronic beat. Intertextual references and echoes also cascade through the centuries, passing through many different styles. The folk song, which transformed as it was passed orally through communities and centuries is a good example of this and bears so many resemblances to the way in which social media works. But with the unfolding 20th century and the loosening of modernism's drive for innovation and originality came an emerging sensibility for explicit creative borrowing, moving through the wider cultural mid-century postmodern aesthetic and its incredulity towards meta-narratives identified by Lyotard. An explosion of musical intertextuality began to dissolve linear time and coherent space in a way quite different from what had gone before. The emergence of affordable recording technologies, tape from the 40s, video from the 1960s, sampling equipment, digital early audio workstations in the 70s and 80s, these all enabled an even clearer connection to the sonic past by allowing the reuse of actual recorded musical artifacts, an opportunity that unleashed what Simon Reynolds, in another favourite book of mine, has called a turn towards retromania. Fundamental to all these cultures of sonic remixability is the loosening hold of traditional music education over musical creativity. Technology enabled wider access to the tools of music composition and performance, which activated different groups of musicians and fueled the surge of bedroom music culture and an increased presence of women in music technology, environments and practices. And those books I put up earlier attend to this. But there's also some great work by someone called Emma Winston, who's looking at how things like vaporwave and hyperpop are predominantly kind of powered by women artists, because they can do it, easily from their bedroom without having to navigate these kind of male spaces. In his work on postmodern music, Jonathan D. Kramer notes that the emerging sensibility for quotation embraced contradictions between highbrow and lowbrow styles, between the past and the present, traditions and cultures, and between meanings and temporalities. With its tendrils in multiple histories and diverse styles, quotation-heavy music holds a double life as both a newly constructed piece and as one that comments on the original material. Are they still changing? I keep pressing the wrong button. Are we all on vaporwave?
It's changing. It's in vaporwave. Yeah.
Lovely. Perfect. So David Metzer writes, it is the ways in which quotation handles the what and the how that makes it such an effective cultural agent. The gesture latches onto a specific work, often a familiar one, and places that work squarely in front of us. The borrowed material is tightly gripped and prominently featured rather than being merely alluded to or buried in the background. This directness calls attention to the cultural associations of the original. For the more discernible and intact the borrowing, the more apparent those associations. When music is visualized, these resonances become even more palpable by drawing on and combining both visual and sonic histories. And there's loads of amazing memes that draw different kind of music gestures and put it with different images. So this was a huge trend. It's definitely not funny in light of recent events and the new election. But there was this incredible kind of move through social media of Donald Trump singing Baby Shark as a kind of way to take out some of the horror, I suppose, of the current situation. On YouTube, these convergences manifest in two ways. First, with over 720,000 hours of new material uploaded every day, the platform supplies a significant amount of audiovisual material for people to copy. This includes uploads from the record industry, but also footage uploaded and organised by fans as part of crowdsourced cataloguing and preservation or citizen journalism. Internet music like vaporwave and chillwave and hypnagogic pop explicitly ransacks YouTube's archives for creative material, remediating existing audiovisual forms. So back to this word, remediation. This is key to YouTube's process of refashioning and regenerating audiovisual material. Proposed in 1999, so a long time before all of this social media thing erupted, by Jay Bolter and Richard Gruson, remediation can be understood as the representation of one medium in another. For Bolter and Grusin, media history is not a series of displacements in which new media, for example, the internet, make old media, like the radio, obsolete. Instead, new media transform older media, retaining some of their features while discarding others. In their own words, remediation is the way in which one medium is seen by our culture as reforming or improving on another. So to do this, they note two different ways that this can happen. The first is they talk about immediacy, and that's things like VR and computer games where you look through the media at the content and you get immersed in the content. And the other one, and it's quite wordy, sorry, the other one is hypermedia, in which the actual surface that you're looking at is really interesting. And in social media, it's the surface that's really interesting because it changes so quickly. You get little things down the side, you get, watch this next and so on. So the surface of the media is very hyper. So YouTube constantly performs both kinds of remediation. A really good example of this is Two Set Violin, and they do incredible performances, but they just put images all up. This will be really familiar to you. Images all over their screens of kind of collage aesthetic to really show that their work is hypermedia. It's all about the media. Videos can promote immediacy through traditional filmmaking techniques like perspective, point of view, and audition, framing, audiovisual synchronicity, and smooth editing, but they can also be hypermediated through social media collage attack. So Bolter and Grusin's theory is located in the remediation of image entirely and the aesthetics of looking. We asked them to contribute to our book, and Richard said yes, but they didn't know anything about sound. They hadn't really thought about sound, so it's a really interesting process, actually. We thought, how interesting if we can apply this idea to music and the act of listening. Sampling, hip-hop, polystylism, vaporwave all force the hypermediacy of quotation into the foreground. And yet, if the revoicing is seamlessly woven into the new sonic textures, music can generate a more transparent sense of immediacy. Mashups of pre-existent music are a good example of this. Here's a few cool examples. First one. Okay, so this is Mash-a-Lots, mashup of 6 country songs that he has put together to show how identical their chord structures are. So you can move seamlessly from one song to another, and the underlying chord structure is identical. So this was a kind of a way of analysing commonalities, actually, in a genre. It's a different one. Okay, so this is DJ Pyromania's audiovisual mashup of 23 of 2016's biggest hits, and he uses wordplay and harmonic mixing to blend together different sonorities and textures into one long song, again to show the similarities and the commonalities of the kind of the vibe of summer of 2016. This one is DJ Earworm.
This year's remix got some phonics. I got electronic beats. I got your pop music with the future fly. So don't worry, even if the sky is falling down.
So this is a real classic mashup where wordplay is used to create a new track where singers complete the lyric or phrase started by another to create a new track in the style of all of these previous tracks. So again, it's just a collage and a mashup technique, something that drove early experimental culture and has now kind of emerged into the mainstream as a very common way of practicing. So here, though the fragments remain recognizable, we can see each song, which is why it's so funny, they rebuild into a new tuneful and plausible song. But when combined with a moving image, music can enact both states of remediation simultaneously. Existing music can be revisualized with different material. Here's one of my favorite ones. It's a really old one. You all have seen it, but it's still one of the best ones.
Lady brings a new cup of coffee, peek from the window. She would rather keep on reading. Look at the frame. There's a handsome guy inside this comic. Close up eyes and come down. Sketchy eye.
Okay, so there's a whole school of literal videos where people use different kind of forms of collage to draw attention to the weirdness of a certain genre, in this sense, music video, just how strange the visualization of music is through music video forms by making it utterly literal. So these mashups and literal videos are extraordinary. They pull from various audiovisual conventions, the montage of experimental film, the soundtracking of blockbuster movies, the participation of gaming, to make cultural analysis of mashed up material. These YouTube users are, in other words, performing the roles of musical and cultural analysts in a very performative way. Of course, we can talk about most of social media's sonic movements in similar ways, especially songs like the cover song, which, especially on YouTube, many people think it's like a genre in its own right. The cover song can move so far away from the original that in some instances, no one remembers who did the original, what it was, and it's not important at all. So in these cases, the idea of remediation and remixability plays with social media's aesthetics of virality, of sharing, and of growth. If something is endlessly replicated, it suggests that it has entered the popular psyche to such an extent that it can be manipulated and parodied while still being instantly sonically recognizable. If sustainability, audience numbers, and influence have traditionally been used as criteria for canon inclusion, do works and processes like these hold the potential to open the doors for a refreshed musical discourse? And yet, how can we attend to these things that move and change so quickly? So we're very aware that the YouTube book came out, was it like 2 years ago? Already it's pretty obsolete. It's talking about stuff that was like, feels like centuries ago. So I've been really interested in the past about how social media users have destabilized the power relations of music's gatekeepers and those deciding who is in and who is out of the various music canons and what criteria is used to make these decisions. Having whizzed through a few examples here, it's clear that the power relations may be ready to shift. By looking at the choices these YouTubers make about when they decide what to mash with what songs from the past to reuse, and which music to couple with which images, we can tell much about what music means to different communities. Looking to YouTube and other social media platforms to do this could hold the key to a real move beyond the traditional gatekeeping activities of music in several ways. I've pitted these as questions because I don't have any answers, but I'm hoping that maybe you all have some ideas about how we might move forward in the analysis of this terrifying landscape. First, who controls the narrative? In his work on social media platforms, James Surofsky writes that they harness what he calls the wisdom of the crowds. As a crowdsourced depository, YouTube harbors unique data about reception history and acts as a powerful barometer for public opinion about music. Likes, shares, remediations indicate popular cultural sensibilities, while comments allow the public to voice their opinion in sometimes surprising ways. I'm the bald guy. These user interactions provide a glimpse into what and how music means to certain communities at particular moments in time. The rise of the collective voice and their infinity of spaces of micro-genres and forgotten musical moments act as a dissented collaborative wave through music history that may challenge traditional processes of music gatekeeping. These have traditionally been the educated reviewer, the well-schooled institutional perspective, the clueless academic. Can the study of internet music be a way to move beyond the whiteness of academia and embrace a greater diversity of voices, not just in terms of ethnicity and geographical location, but also in terms of realizing the importance of amateur and fan voices? Second, who creates the music? As we've seen, remediation culture allows artists to keep control of their own narrative. Lil Nas X has successfully remediated, reacted to, and analysed his own content through a knowing lens of immediacy that spreads across multiple platforms. But remediation can also de-emphasise the traditional emphasis on the author or composer that has resided at the heart of music history. Could remediated sounds and images encourage a positive embrace of collective creativity and collaboration, where music and image are passed through the lens of multiple people, allowing numerous voices to engage with what music is and can be? For me, this signals a welcome move towards what feminist music scholars have called distributed authorship, that recognises the input that supports all levels of creativity. This is already happening in musicology, with a greater emphasis not only on musicians who historically were not able to perform their work, but also to the creative prowess of those not traditionally considered creative, i.e. those who didn't identify as composers, people like producers, sound women, orchestrators, recording engineers, and in film, sound editors and boom operators who are extraordinarily creative and have great power over the final product, but, are not going up for the Oscars. Can remediated audiovisual content online be seen as akin to the sonic rich remainder of the 20th century? Third, we're almost done, I promise. What type of music is being created? The move away from individual composers and artists into the remediated and remixed forms of parodies and mashups point to significant cultural moments and reveal information about the longevity or revival of certain artists and music. Similarly, video essays, lyric videos, and reaction videos draw attention to tropes that are dominating the current critical landscape. Who is being mashed up with who and why? This information reveals that certain musical communities find interesting and worth preserving or recirculating at a particular time. Last, how on earth can we respond to this glorious mess of internet music? To a certain extent, the music academic's role in cataloguing, grouping, analysing and contextualising music is being done by YouTubers themselves, whether it be Lil Nas X, the teenage girls commenting on videos at 2 a.m. in the morning, meme creators, mashup artists. All these users are critiquing and performing comparative analysis. This has become very apparent to me over the last few years, where my students at Goldsmiths continually cite YouTube instead of the texts that we are writing that are taking 3 years to get published and, then feel very out of date. They want to keep their references very, very contemporary. So how do we as academics respond to this? What is our role as analysts of this analysis? At best then, YouTube can be seen as a powerful crowdsource intermediary into gatekeeping, able to deconstruct and critique the traditional processes of music promotion, history and canonization. And yet, in the face of AI, can we ever really be true and free in this world? To finish, let's go back to our original question. How best to respond to this shift in music culture? I love academic writing. That's what I always do. I've made some video essays. They've been a disaster, so I always return to writing. In the YouTube books, we asked people to make YouTube playlists with a QR code at the beginning so they could listen as they read, so at least they could hear what they were writing about. Other people have done some really amazing work on the video essay. But should we go further? What benefit might there be in practice research methods to tackle this new environment? At Goldsmiths, at Goldsmiths, most of our assessment is now practice research. So students can respond to scholarly questions in a very practical way. They can curate a show, they can do some video art or installation work, they can perform something, so long as it's research driven, because this seems like a way of responding to what we're talking about by using its own tools. These approaches are great for reaching out to new audiences and disseminating ideas in new and sometimes radical ways. But can we go even further? Can we decenter our own voices and write and create collectively? What would that look like? And what do you all think? That's it. And I hope you're still there.
Okay, I'm still there.
You're still here. I had a horrible feeling I've been talking into a void.
Yeah, I see people here. Okay. Do you want to unshare the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Maybe then, yeah, it's better. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that blip. It's really hard, isn't it, when someone disappears, to kind of keep in the vibe.
Yeah, I always do that. I always ask people, are you still there? Okay, so people, now it's time for questions. I'd like to thank you, Holly, very much for this lecture, and I think she wants to answer from us. She posts questions all during her lecture, and I think she wants to hear what we have to offer. Maybe not answers, but comments, opinions. So feel free. You can talk, can switch your microphone, or write in the chat, even in Portuguese if you want.
Yeah, great. So it was quite wordy, so I understand it might take some time, and I can send out the paper if it's easier to kind of read later on. But I'm very grateful that you're all still here.
Okay, so questions. Someone wants to open the. If you don't, I feel obliged to start, but I would like that maybe the audience. Okay, I'll start with something. I think the people here who know me, I'm in a research about the use of classical music in other cinema. And one of the most used pieces of music are pieces from the Four Seasons, Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
I was just watching something. I was just starting. There's actually a Netflix show called The Four Seasons. I don't know if you have it too. And it's all based on Vivaldi's music. Each episode has a different... Tell us more.
Yeah, and it's crazy because actually it comes from the culture of 20th century, mass culture, phonograph production. Actually, Vivaldi was not known, or the Four Seasons were not so known before the Second World War. And now it's like a mainstream, total mainstream and cliche.
Absolutely. And so what prompted that spread? Was it just the early phonograph recordings?
Yeah, phonograph recordings after the Second World War.
Gosh.
So phonograph industry, and now YouTube, because the Four Seasons are very much employed in YouTube. And
absolutely.
I was trying to make a connection between other cinema and use of Four Seasons and YouTube, but it was very hard because the directors and all the people involved, they won't say, oh, it was because of YouTube. No, they won't say that.
No, it has to be something from the art world. Much more meaningful. Oh, I guess, I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because that's the influence of technological advancement and the affordances of a technology into absolutely what we hear and what we know and how things move around culture. So it's fascinating. So whoever recorded that first essentially was responsible for that enormous spread. I mean, it's all over YouTube, isn't it? It's become that cliched kind of accompaniment to pretty much anything.
Yes, yes.
It's still a great piece of
It's
music.
a very classical thing, because we were talking about popular music, but the very classical thing, Vivaldi, Four Seasons, Vivaldi, Baroque composer, and now it's like he's a contemporary of us.
Yeah. And I mean, his work is also being remediated by recomposition. The guy that does recomposition, Richter. Richter, R-A-C-H-T-E-R.
Okay, Max Richter. Yeah. And
Richter.
Yeah. Max Richter. And
yeah, absolutely. He's done a beautiful recomposition of it. It's absolutely, and then took that to a whole different audience, actually.
And it's used in these other films I study. Max Richter reworking of Vivaldi's compositions, Four Seasons.
How interesting. So filmmakers are choosing the recomposed version.
Yeah.
Huh. That's incredibly. So, I mean, that's just a brilliant example of remediation.
Yeah.
And hypermediation as well. So the original artist is very clearly in the foreground, but so is the new artist. It's this lovely dialogue. Yeah, I love that piece. Interesting.
Yeah. People, I won't monopolize this, so.
I have a comment to make, or a question, I don't know. I work for YouTube, and I do videos of recipes and for a chef. And often we think about how to use the music for illustrating the recipe and everything, because there's a common sense, I think, in social media that the audience can stand the silence or can stand any void, and everything has to be filled with music and some kind of sound or explanation or anything. And I also do some work for social media like Instagram and TikTok for this chef. And one thing that always happens is we have to go to these websites that make music for like white music that makes there's no copyright, or there's a copyright. So there's like a bunch of musicians and compositors that are making music just to be used in social media.
Yeah, and library music, is it? Library music.
Well, yeah, yes.
That's the name, Barbara, library music in English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually one of the really wonderful ways that a composer can make money and make a living, isn't it?
Yeah.
These days.
Yeah. And I watched the Four Seasons shows that you told me, and I also watched the Chef's Table that also uses Vivaldi in the introduction and intro. And it kind of makes this old genre coming to the new ages. And also it's not very common on social media to see people using classical music. We see much more of this general compositions or general music for like, because when you go to this website, you can go through what kind of narrative are you doing. It's action, drama, So I would like you to, because it's not the videos that we make is not the main thing is not the music, but music is essential to get the audience attention. And it's also like these questions of how loud is the music, how low is the music, and that kind of thing.
Oh, can you tell us something about how you would choose? So according to kind of what ingredients you have, how would that determine what kind of music you had?
We actually choose from the chef's personal taste. So she likes jazz music and she likes classical music. So we kind of use those genres that are more, they're less pop or less common sense in a way, or less like trying to get your attention, more smooth and gentle, you know?
So interesting. I love that point about like audiences having a fear of silence, because of course that's kind of the whole history of film music composition. in early silent cinema, you know, no one wanted to sit in silence, which is one part of the reason that we have musical accompaniment. But then when we got the talkies in the 30s, and you didn't need to cover that silence because people were talking, people still needed all the gaps filled, and they needed to be, you know, how do we think? How should we react to this? Can you help us along? Music became so important for narratives, didn't it?
Yes, and a few months ago we did a podcast, a video cast, which is very common now also, and we didn't put any music, so it didn't fight with what they were talking, and also because we wanted to test the audience to make I don't know, to see if they can stand just hearing the subject and not paying attention to anything else.
I think culture has got, I mean, we're just so attuned to it in film going history and in everything that we see. The moving image is just so connected. Theatre as well is so connected to having a kind of a musical accompaniment, which is not to say that it is not completely meaningful and has a huge amount of power, because it can often overpower the image and tell a different story and so on. But it's to say that it's developed a really special vernacular. So we can say that music is quite abstract, right? But in film viewing, we know what love sounds like. We know, you mentioned dramatic music. We know what a dramatic moment sounds like. And you can trace it all the way back through opera and music theatre and so on. But it's a very distinct vernacular. And I think people are so accustomed to that when they aren't being told from multiple directions, you can feel potentially a little bit lost. And I guess it's the noise of contemporary life as well. We're so used to competing noises and images and sounds and screens and so on. My kid can't watch TV. She can't sit down and watch TV. She has to have the iPad going as well, and probably some music on at the same time. And like, her attention is all over the place. It drives me mad.
Yeah. And there's also the subject of how long does the video lasts in YouTube, because YouTube is actually a platform for long videos. Although there's the shorts now, but there's a lot of short videos that make success, but it's a platform for long videos. And there's also this common sense that you have to make as quickly as possible, or at least 8 minutes, so you get the monetization. So
amazing.
Yeah, we try to test also just do long videos to see if someone can stand, and they don't, but some of them do.
Really?
Stay for
without music?
Yeah, without music. This last video that we made, it was an hour long with no music, and we had a good retention of attention, but it's always like less than 20%. So most of 40% or 60% or 80% always just drop it before reaching 20 minutes.
Fascinating. Oh my gosh. So the role of music in keeping people in. Maybe you need some stingers. Suspenseful music. What's going to happen when you put the gravy on? I'd love to talk to you more about this. Please do send me an email.
It's very interesting. Okay, I'll send you an email.
Lovely. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Carolina wrote in the chat. She wrote in Portuguese, so I try to translate this. She actually works in a radio called Eldorado.
Yeah.
And the main thing in this radio is how you curate the curator of music, how you choose music for the audience. And they have an audience that's very that's always with them, because they know that they do this work. the preference and everything. So her question is, in what way the participation of the user in YouTube has reconfigured or not the role of radio as this kind of curation of artists, of discovering new artists and music and styles. Radio programmers like traditional gatekeepers, and because radio is still there, it's remediation is still there.
Yeah, it's always going to be important. Like, radio is utterly essential, I think, for people to find out new artists, I suppose, and to have it curated for them. And whatever radio station, this is a great question, whatever radio station you listen to is going to be curating in a certain genre or style or so on, but you can find things within that. I guess there's an argument that something like the Spotify playlist does similar sort of curational practices, I suppose, but I think that's so depersonalized in the way that radio is so comforting, isn't it? Because someone is talking to you and someone is making this playlist for you and hoping that you'll like it and commenting on it and you learn a bit about it. So I don't think it's great to hear. I'd love to hear about your work in the radio a bit more, and that sort of curation of the DJ and the role of the DJ. But I think for younger generations, there is a difficulty sometimes in listening. And I mean, again, I'm basing this on my 10-year-old and her friends, where just to listen to something is beyond them. They need every sense to be filled up in order to concentrate on something. So younger generations, from my experience, tend to want to listen to the music, but also see the video or see someone else's video and then see 15 other people's video of the same piece of music, which is interesting as well. But the radio curator, I think, that is definitely not going anywhere, right? We all have our favorite stations.
Carolina, do you want to add something? You can do it in the chat. Well, there is a comment by Fernando. Just to thank you both. Thank you, Holly, for such an interesting talk. Your work on sounds and experimental film. He's very interested in experimental film. It's a constant reference in my graduate classes, Warm Wishes.
Oh, you must send me an email as well. I'd love to hear about the work.
To ask something or something specific, or I don't know. Oh, Gabriela.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
So thank you for the class today, first of all. But I study K-pop, so I was very interested about everything. I study and I work with K-pop.
So what's your work with K-pop?
Oh, I think she was out of our meeting. Okay, again. Okay,
I'm back. Sorry.
What a cliffhanger.
Yes, sorry. So I work and I study K-pop, and it was interesting because I'm writing my final piece for my master, and I'm using a lot of the same references that you mentioned during the class.
Great.
And especially about the fandom culture.
Yes.
And so you mentioned a little bit about how fandom is changing the way artists are making music. And in K-pop, this is very strong. We can see a lot of that. So I want to know from you, I want to more about it. How do you see that the fandom, not only you talked about the reaction videos, but in other ways, fandom is also changing the way artists make music, because like in K-pop, sometimes they choose what type of music they do. They choose what type of music video. It very much comes from the fandom. So I want to know from you, how do you see this in other music industries around the world?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I went to a conference on K-pop in Seoul last year, and it had some K-pop artists, and it was so fascinating because, you know, it gets this rap, doesn't it, of being an industry that just produces what the fans need and what everyone wants, and that is kind of just articulating the same thing over and over again, and it's very formula driven, but it just isn't at all. And the creativity of it was just astonishing. And the writers come from all over the world as well, so it's a real kind of global form. But I think the K-pop fans are kind of the fiercest, aren't they, in the world? So in terms of kind of how they write the music, I'm not sure how the fans change the actual like sonic structure and so on, but the ways in which musicians behave, continually being online and talking with fans and showing behind the scenes footage and so on is completely different, isn't it? The way that they have to create paratexts around everything that they do, so it's not at all about just a song. It's about around the song. But another form that more recently I mentioned earlier is hyperpop. I don't know if you know hyperpop.
I love it.
Oh, me too. It's like pure avant-garde weirdness. But one of the most interesting things about it is people like Charlie XCX and Sophie and so on. They kind of co-created a lot of their music with the fans, either kind of battle of the bands or I mean this is quite a common thing now. It's really interesting. So they post an idea online and fans do a version of it or say what might come next or play an instrument over it or something, and it actually ends up in the folds of the song. And with Sophie, she kind of, well, they were earlier than that remediation process, but then afterwards it was fascinating because so many people remediated her song Face Shopping, for instance, that it became very different from the original song, and it became very much more like EDM and Derby. And then whenever they played live, they played that song, they played it, the fan versions of it.
I don't know if you remember, but during the pandemic days, Charlie did an album with her fans. I thought that was great. And also recent, she's not hyperpop, but she's pop music. Jade from Little Mix, do you know her?
I do. What's she been doing?
Yeah, she's going to release her solo album. And she said like, oh, my solo album is going to have a name, a concept. But I started releasing music and I started to see the fans' reaction. So I decided to change everything. So I changed the name of the album. I changed the cover. I changed everything.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, now it's called That's Showbiz, the album, because she saw that the fans really like the concept of like talking about the music industry and how she's in there for so long and her position as a woman. So she's really talking about it, as Charlie did in the past. And I think that's very, very fascinating how, like, with the technology, with YouTube and all these social medias, it's not like the artist, oh, I have the power, I'll do whatever I want. They also want to know what the fans want to see and want to hear. So I think like this can be tricky, for example, for K-pop, but like I have a colleague who is a K-pop idol, and he was like talking to me saying, oh, like my music that I do solo is very different from what I do with my group. And like I took 25 years to like understand what I wanted to do as a solo, to understand my identity, to understand like what I am as a solo artist. So it's very tricky, but it's kind of like very fascinating to study, to analyze this.
That's wonderful. That's such an interesting point, isn't it? I didn't know that about Jade. I think she's got a lot of interesting things to do, right? She's emerging as quite an interesting person. I'll have a look into that. But it's a really good example of how things like that kind of destabilizes the gatekeepers of music, right? And that who's Who's in charge of the creativity? Well, it's collective, potentially. It can be collaborative. Then who's in charge of who hears this music? Well, if you're collaborating directly with fans, then it's the fans that are going to take that out. And I guess that the question that we had earlier about the radio, that could become quite interesting then, how these things start to interact with each other, and then what would radio's role be if YouTube becomes much more of a kind of creative space, especially in high industry stuff like Jade. Actually, in another paper, I've been working on this idea of mercurial musicking. So it's not about, you know, just having one author or one composer or a band or an AR person or a manager determining the sound. It becomes like mercury, kind of very changeable, open, porous boundaries that anyone can kind of interfere with. So it becomes, yeah, I think that's one of the most exciting things I think about where music might go at the moment.
Right. That's nice.
Thanks,
Thank you.
That's a great question. Thanks.
So people, more questions? Don't feel afraid. You can talk or can write, even in Portuguese, no problem.
I've just seen the chat. Sorry, there's such great comments on there.
Yeah, that's the comment of Carolina is in Portuguese. That's the one I tried to translate.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, Damile, she doesn't have a micro now, so I read. You can also read it, the chat. A great talk, Holly Rogers. I've been reading some of your other texts about the use of music and sound in experimental films, as well as sound in the gallery. You spent some time researching disruptive listening modes in cinema and art galleries. I'd like to ask how your current research relates to that earlier work. Could you also comment a bit more on listening modes of YouTube audiences? Could they be perceived as disruptive? I'm thinking here in dialogue with concepts like aporia. It's here, Damile Cunha, she's a professor in the northeast of Brazil, University of Sergipe.
Ah, lovely to see you. What a good question. That's a really hard question. So the work on disruptive kind of modes of listening is been focused. This is a really hard question. It's been focused a lot on experimental film, where things like, I guess we were talking about with Barbara about YouTube and how, you know, audiences want certain musics and certain musics can tell stories, and that's been the history of film composition, but I got really obsessed in the last kind of 5 years about moments where the sound does something that we don't expect, or it doesn't seem to fit, and when it doesn't seem to fit, it draws attention to itself. We become very active as listeners, like, what on earth are we meant to feel here? It can be really confusing, but it can be extraordinarily powerful as well to undermine our belief in an image. So I was looking at this idea of aporia, which is a sort of rhetorical device where two statements repel each other. They say different things and opposite things. And thinking about how can music and moving image do that. What I feel is that as we move across media and through time, is that things like disruptive listening and aporia have made their ways into mainstream filmmaking. And in mainstream filmmaking now, we often get really unexpected soundtracks that can be quite alienating sometimes, and not at all what we expect. You know, not in the 19th century sound world of, you know, that we have of like John Williams and so on, but just really angular, unusual instrumentation, rhythms that don't go with the rhythm of the image and so on. So they lead us into that kind of really active state of trying to find meaning within all of this stuff that doesn't work together. If we look to social media, I have been thinking about experimental film culture going into mainstream film culture, like all avant-garde does. It's all, you know, the avant-garde being the troops that go ahead of the field and they scout things out, and then eventually the whole mainstream field catches up and that stuff becomes normalized. And I think I had been thinking that that's been happening through experimental film culture and into mainstream culture. But more recently, that's why it's such a lovely question. I think that potentially film scoring is being directly influenced by social media, and social media that moves incredibly fast. Like Barbara was saying, library music is being used that isn't written for that moment. It can be plonked on. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but we've become so accomplished at putting sounds and images together, however diverse they are and however they historically shouldn't go together, that now in mainstream film we can be really adventurous. So I think that in terms of how we listen, I think as a culture and as cultures, we've become incredibly accomplished at putting discordant sounds and images together and finding a way through that as well. So I think social media actually is changing everything in terms of how we score and think about film music. And yeah, I think it's disrupted. I think it's disrupted compositional practice in mainstream film really significantly. That's such a great question. Sorry, I don't know if I answered it at all well though.
Damila, it's okay for you?
No.
You can add in the chat because she's without sound, without microphone. So she's writing in the chat. Some people are having problems with microphone here, so they are writing.
Yes, I understand the problems. At least you're still here.
Yeah, she said yes. You answer.
Oh, Damla, I'd love to hear more about your works. Please do send me an email if you can, because I'd love to hear what you're doing. And also, I've got kind of a piece that I'm working on at the moment about this movement and how kind of social media is disrupting how we listen to other forms of media. And it would be great to have your opinion on it before I send it to anyone else. So that'd be lovely. Thank you.
I can make the intermediation, and she can also write her email there in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. I'll put mine down. It'd be really nice to hear from everyone as well.
There is a comment by Eduardo Vicente. He's my supervisor, my post-PhD supervisor in University of São Paulo. He says, "Dear Holly, I wanted to thank you most sincerely for your generosity in joining us this afternoon and for your incredibly engaging lecture. It was highly enlightening for both myself and my students. There are many topics I would very much like to discuss with you, particularly regarding Brazilian urban music, which I find a truly fascinating area of research. I'm sorry not to be able to continue the conversation at the moment, as I'm currently in a location with very poor internet connection and involved in another university activity. And I do hope we will have more opportunities to speak, and it would be a real pleasure to help organize a visit for you to Brazil.
Done. Yeah, absolutely. Massive. Of course, it'd be such a pleasure. This conversation has been so interesting. It's brought up so many things I haven't really thought about, which is just everything you can ask for from an audience. So thank you so much. And Eduardo, yes, please send me an email, because I really want to know about Brazilian urban music, because I don't know much about it at all, actually. Very strangely, just
hip hop. So funky has some kinds of common base with hip hop, but there are many other kinds of urban music.
Fantastic. So I guess hip hop being kind of one of the proto-remediation forms of music, right? Based on sampling and reuse and revoicing and rethinking, and the dub sound systems as well that we were talking about earlier. So the lineages of all of this is really profound. People talk about YouTube in 2005 changing everything, but essentially it really didn't change much, actually, because this stuff is happening in all different parts of music making and art making and filmmaking already. It just brought it into kind of a mass communication device that everyone could become engaged with. So yeah, I guess the change was in accessibility, but in terms of what it was doing, the things that you've all been talking about, like radio, Brazilian dance music, and urban music, these strategies were already at play. Collective composition, the rethinking of music by collaging and so on. These are all very, very old styles of creativity. So it's been great to hear about all of this stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. Well, more questions, people? Feel free.
Probably got the storm that I had earlier. It's gone now. It just came in the middle of the talk to disrupt everything.
I was joking here because here in Brazil, especially São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, we haven't had much problems with internet, light. Suddenly light comes out and okay.
Wow.
For hours.
Oh my goodness, that's terrifying.
Yeah, but thanks God today, not.
You were okay, I was not okay.
Yeah, and I was joking. She's in England and she has the same problem as we have with internet lights.
Let's go to solar power.
People, I know lots of people between you study experimental film, sound systems, even YouTube. People have asked questions about YouTube.
Yeah, it's been really great. Thank you so much.
I have written something here. Yes. If you don't mind, I ask another question because it has to do with my work, classical music in audio cinema, but it has to do also with television and other films influencing YouTube, the other way around.
Yeah.
I think
TV and films influencing YouTube.
Yeah, because one of your examples in your text, I think it was the second one, remediation. It was a video of Traviata's Brindisi, the very famous song in Traviata. But actually, it was the person who put it. He makes a link between a TV show. No, not a TV show. Twilight, yeah, and Brindisi. And in my work, I studied a film from a Chilean filmmaker called Sebastian Lelio. The film is called A Fantastic Woman. I don't know if you saw it. It's from 2017.
Right.
And there is a Vivaldi song, Sposa Son Desprezata.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not by Vivaldi, but it's musicologist's thing. It's not important for us. But the thing is that this air was in the Sopranos TV shows.
Oh, yes.
Because I was asking myself, but why the hell this particular part of Vivaldi's opera? And it was in this show, and it was a student of mine who told me, this was in a TV show, Sopranos. This is in a lot of episodes of this TV show, and he told me maybe it's because of that.
Right. So the emergence of that into kind of moving image culture came through a different portal, as it were. Ah, yes. And the Twilight one is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's kind of all teenage girls now love that piece because
maybe it's a TV show or a film that makes a difference, not the other way around. Then TV show going to YouTube, and then go into film, and then go again to YouTube.
And as it does that movement, at each stage it gathers a significance, doesn't it? Or it becomes something slightly different. So when it kind of moves back into TV, it could mean something different or sound like something different. There was a Lady Gaga mashup with the Cramps for, you know what? My mind is failing me. It's almost bedtime here. The recent Tim Burton Wednesday.
Okay,
Blood Mary.
Yes, thank you so much.
Gabriela knows everything of pop music, so let's ask Gabriela.
Thank you, Gabriela. So Bloody Mary was famously in Wednesday in a all over it actually, and then there was a really famous scene in it where Wednesday Addams sings to a Cramps song, which was also really famous, and someone on YouTube did a mashup of these two songs, and it became so famous that the new adverts for Wednesday for the second series use the mashup. So they don't use the original versions, they use the versions that were mashed into a different sonority and spread all over social media. So that's a really nice example of how kind of music can not just change in its meaning, but also in its complete texture, and then move back into its original place. Completely different. Yes.
But just complimented, this Blood Mary mashup was so famous that Lady Gaga opened like her last shows with Blood Mary.
Love that. Okay, yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, write that down. I'm writing everything you say down, Gabriela. That's amazing, isn't it? So that's another thing. I guess, Gabriela, we were talking about that earlier, weren't we? Like how social media or the movement or transmedia can change how music is being composed and how it's used and how it lives on after it's been composed and so on. That's just such a good example of it, isn't it? That Lady Gaga chooses to use that version in her live shows.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I guess if you were at that live show, you'd feel so invested in that as well. You know, you would feel such a part of this movement. So it's not just kind of seeing someone deliver something to you. It's like I helped create this. It's really powerful. And back to gatekeepers. It's a way of kind of muscling through that control and letting other voices and perspectives and have some sort of say over what's being heard and how it's moving. I think that it can be so important. I have to see what happens, I suppose. Thank you, Luíza. That was a really good point, though.
Thank you. Leonardo say thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, more questions. It's up to you until which time you can stay here, because I told you maybe 1 hour lecture and then we stay for questions. But
yeah, no, it's great. It's really wonderful. I'm learning loads, so this is great. At some stage, the aforementioned 10-year-old is going to come down and start screaming.
Yeah.
No, internet
I think it's our limit. It's our deadline. 10 o'clock there, and yeah. No, even now, I think in 15 minutes it would be our deadline.
Okay.
So
maybe I can use those 15 minutes for coffee because it's been quite heavy.
People, anyone wants to make a question, to make a comment, take your time, think, but she'll go away.
But you have my email, and I'd just love to hear comments or examples, or just so interesting, or examples when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't think at the actual moment of the lecture of down the questions, and then okay, I could have asked that and that.
Always. And it's sometimes really nice to do it anyway, to keep the conversation going.
Just one comment about the four seasons, because I'm very much in this world of classical music and classical music concerts, and it's all over the world. The four seasons again being presented in concerts.
I guess it brings the audiences in, right? Familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity. The concerts are always full of people. Even if they play everything, they don't play only the very famous parts. They play everything. And sometimes like with a musicologist approach, but the concerts are always full of people.
Amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. And often the same people over and over again as well. You just kind of love that piece. Well, it has something though, doesn't it? It's not just, you know, that it's there and it's being performed all the time. It has something that people just absolutely love. I mean, so imagine having written that centuries ago and thinking in 2025 it's more popular than he could ever have imagined.
Yeah, I think never could he have imagined.
Yeah, wild. It's one of those things I think probably won't happen again because things are so transient and move so fast these days. I don't feel that things get that sort of traction anymore, or don't have time to get that sort of traction.
Okay.
I think you all need to go and have a cup of tea.
Yeah, I think we can. Well, if nobody has no questions, so think a lot about this marvelous lecture. Rethink, and then make your questions. You have the email of Professor Holly Rogers, and I think she'll be very pleased to answer you. Or I can intermediate if you feel shy to write to her.
Don't feel shy. Please don't feel shy. I'd love to hear from you. Luíza, thank you so much for the invitation.
I thank you very much, and I hope you'll be in touch, and maybe one other opportunity to talk again.
Perfect. Look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you all somewhere or hearing from you. And thank you so much for sitting through that.
Yes. People are thanking you.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. That was really great. Thank you so much.
So I'm closing the lecture, but as I told you before, Carolina, you want to say something? No, she's a reaction. Okay.
I've so come to Brazil.
Yeah, you should.
Wish list. Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Just lovely to have you here.
Lovely to meet you all. Luíza, I'll be in touch.
Be in touch, yes.
See you soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.